Today it's Friday, March 6th. You can tell it's hat day because I'm wearing my hat. It's my favorite one. Let's see, late book reports you can still turn in through next Friday. Campton comes from permission slips. I was telling kids today if you still owe one because they're due next Friday. 9-week assessments coming up on Monday. We're going to talk about the glow party. We're going to talk about tie game is food, which apparently kids had a tough time figuring out. So a bowl of questions. If you did not answer, I'm going through and telling kids that's day 2 because we're down to the very end. And then, if you have not finished the bowl of questions, it will be open if you want to do that this weekend or tonight. You're welcome to do that. And then 9-week assessment coming up on Monday. I will again send out remind over weekend, but it is the 9-week assessment. You're going to want to read story, watch video. Make sure you watch all 3 videos and read stories coming up Monday. If you've not done that come Monday, then definitely going to make it really tough to take assessment, but you only have the 1 class per to get it done. Glow party, you can buy the tickets for $15. So I figured I'd remind you from there. I sent out the link last night for the videos of it. If you want to watch those, you're welcome to that. Now back to Greek mythology and our stories and me taking kids' iPads because they're not busy doing the things they're supposed to. Let's see. Rewindy thing from there. What happened to all the humans during the big war? What does Zeus do to all the gods who fought against him?
Eat them.
Eat them where? In the Tartarus. What is it the monsters have to agree to? What is it the Cyclops do after the war?
They make forges in the mountains.
Hide in the mountain. Then what is Zeus's worry about the sky?
It's going to fall.
Why?
It's going to fall.
It's on the shape of a bowl.
Because the mountain was going to fall, so they worry about it sliding down and crushing everybody. So he comes up with a plan. And what is Zeus's plan?
Atlas holds
He goes down, finds Atlas, makes Atlas lift it up, but then he worries about Atlas throwing it and crushing everybody. So how does he prevent Atlas from just eating it on the And what are the Hesperides?
his daughters.
He says your daughters get to go free as long as you don't crush them. Then we got to, then they get the 3 kingdoms. The kingdom that Zeus gets is
Everything in the sky above. Everything in the sky above. Everything above that. Everything on land.
yes, everything above the sky. And then Poseidon gets
Water.
There you go, and water and Hades.
Everything underground.
And then our visual interpretation help you out that one. Now Zeus goes up to Mount Olympus, says, I get to take over this place. How many thrones are on Mount Olympus?
12.
And he goes, I'm going to start filling in the thrones. Who are the first people who are going to get thrones?
Zeus and Hera.
Well, I meant, let's go, what group of people are the first ones?
The Olympians.
Works for me. It's like they're all Olympians. Zeus's brothers and sisters is what I was going for, and apparently I failed you at that question. So then we get to the assignment we're going to put into the notebook. So now you can open up notebook. We can try to help you out from there. Now apparently we have the first several. The first god to get the throne would be?
Zeus.
Nice. There's Zeus. Excuse me. What do we say for Zeus?
Lightning bolt. King of all the gods.
You have to actually listen to the words that come out of my mouth. King of all gods. Then the hand sign you do for him is?
Lightning bolt point thing.
That's for the lightning bolt pointy thing. Nicely done. The next one to get a throne is?
Hera.
And what do we say for her?
Queen of all the gods.
Hand sign for her.
Sparkly moose.
Works for me. Sparkling moose, or I guess prickly moose for some of you. And then the next one to get a throne.
Poseidon.
And what do we say for him?
God of the ocean. God of the ocean.
And the hand. And this is where you have your option of hand signs, which was quite the interesting collection there. For me, I'm going to swim. Apparently some of you guys are more in the drowning thing. Others of you apparently are on roller coasters. It's hard to figure out what's going on. I'm going to try not to judge. The next one after him to get a throne is going to be? Hades.
But he doesn't want one, so he makes one under the underworld.
And so this is where Hades technically is the next god to get one. He is also the first god to give up a throne. And so he's not like spurred by Zeus, who's like, you don't get one. Zeus tries to give him one. Hades just goes, no, I don't want your why does Hades not want throne?
Social.
Because the whole other people are out there things. I was like, I don't want your throne. Throws his hand in his face. Says, I'm just going to go down and make my own throne. So then after Hades, our next one to get a throne and keep it is going to be? No. Demeter.
Wait, what's the...
My dad called me Hades.
You mean the one that's not up there? Correct. It's the not putting of Hades. Demeter, we should already know what she is the god of. Close.
God of the harvest and of
There
the
you go.
cereal.
Demeter, god of grains and harvest.
Why don't you say God is? Oh my God.
Good question. So here's the thing with this. For the Greeks, they refer to all of them as God because God is a race. Just like you don't say Mason is a human, but Mackenzie is a humaness. It's just you're all humans. It was the same thing with the Greeks. Both Athena is a god and Zeus is a god. The idea of a goddess is not until the 1970s with women's lib and the whole idea about give women power. And they're like, you've got to add a dis to the end of it because that way you can diss those men. And so it became a goddess. So for me, I go back to the Greek mythology version where it's a race. And so now, if you're trying to compliment a woman, then you should probably, yes, tell her, you're a goddess. And that's going to be the compliment. But we're not complimenting them. We're explaining you what race they are. Hence, God. I get that question every year. Solid one. So now back to Demeter, who's a god, not a goddess. And on here, I figure for the hand sign, you're going to have to roll with me on this one. Because I tried to get a little creative. And so for here, I figured she's the god of grains and harvest with the farmers. They've got to do the farming thing. But most of you don't go out and do a whole lot of farming for the most part. So instead, I figured it's the next best thing. Well, for many of you, you don't go outside at all because it's outside of your basement where the TV screen is. And so I figured it's probably in the summertime, once a week, when your parents force some of you to go out. Not all of you. Some of you still get a chance to resist it. But when your parents force you to go outside that one day of the week, and they say, hey, I want you to do laps back and forth across the yard. So that's what we're going to have you do, is the imitating of the laps back and forth across the yard. So you're going to do the lawnmower. If you are unfamiliar with the lawnmower, then one, I'm sorry that you're not a dancing person. Two, you should be on TikTok more often. The way the lawnmower works is you have to grab your lawnmower, but you have to start your lawnmower before you can begin. So you have to grab your pull start, and you're going to pull your lawnmower, pull the lawnmower, mow the lawn, mow the lawn, mow the lawn, mow the lawn, and you're going to mow the lawn from there. For some of you, that's too much exercise already, and you're more of a riding lawnmower type person. So for you, you're going to sit on lawnmower, and you don't have to pull start yours. You sit on lawnmower, and you go start the mower, start the mower, start the mower, riding mower, riding mower, riding mower, riding mower. So you're going to be doing the lawnmower. So it's Demeter, god of grains and harvest, or however your particular lawnmower may be. And this is also where I figure out that some of you should not mow a lawn. You go, I'm mowing the lawn. And I'm like, no, you're hitting trees and probably ruining a very expensive piece of equipment. Yes, dear. Oh, they should. Well, watch my TikTok this weekend. We're going to solve that problem.
I'll see you on before you.
So now we have Demeter. The next one to get a throne after Demeter is going to be Hestia. But here's the problem with Hestia. She's not listed for our Olympians. She is going to be our next god that gives up a throne. She gets a throne. She sits on a throne for a long period of time. But there's a story coming up where she does no longer have a throne. But to explain her real quick, because she's one of the ones like, I've never heard of her. She exists. She's out there. She's one of the sisters of Zeus. Back over here, she's the one in this particular picture. She looks like she's a ghost in the thing she's not. She's supposed to be made out of smoke. Hestia was the god of the hearth and the home. Hearth meaning fancy fireplacey thing, which doesn't sound all super special at first, till you realize this was the time period where fire became sort of invented and became all important. And if you did not have fire, then you had what were called kidsicles at your house. And if you did not want to have kidsicles, then you had a fire. I mean, not to burn your children unless you were just grumpy, but to keep them nice and warm. So having a safe home and having a hearth to keep your family warm, super important. So a lot of people ended up praying to her. So the picture is supposed to be, that's the fireplace, and she's made out of smoke. And she's supposed to be protecting the house by coming over it. Instead, she looks like a big creepy ghost. She is, in Greek mythology, going to be one of the only friendly gods throughout the entire thing. If you look over here, This is her in the background. She's holding up the torch to the whole hearth and home, and she's being all nice. We're going to explain in a moment why she's being nice there. But throughout all of our stories of Greek mythology, she's going to be one of the only gods that has no mean stories about her. She was pretty much a good person the whole way through. To reward her for that, she does not get a throne. So now, Zeus has filled... Ooh, how many thrones has Zeus filled in?
4.
5. 6.
5. Those 4 plus Hestia, which is going to keep throwing you off because you have to keep remembering that she's there. So for those of you who wrote Hestia and then had to cross her off, that might actually help you out because you're going to remember that she's technically there all the way to the very end. She is going to be there until we get to Olympian number 13, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So here's the problem. Zeus has filled in 5 of his thrones. How many thrones are left to fill in?
7.
Good job, my island kids. But he's run out of he's run out of brothers and sisters. And he wants to fill it with people that are related to him because he doesn't feel he can trust anyone else. But he can't give one to his father, because what happened to his father?
Dead.
So it's gone. He thought about giving one to his mom, but Rhea wants nothing to do with it. He was like, Mom, you want a throne? She's like, no, that's responsibility. I saw what happened to your father. She's like, I'm done with that. I'm just going to go hang out and do my thing. So she turns him down. He can't give one to Mother Earth because she's the Earth. Can't give one to Uranus, his grandfather, because again, gone. He was like, so I'm out of parents, I'm out of grandparents, I'm out of brothers and sisters. So he comes up with the next best thing, which would be
Children.
his children. So he decides to start filling it in with kids. Now, the next one who's going to get a throne is one by the name of Hephaestus. He and Hera end up having 4 children together. 2 boys, 2 girls. The problem is sexism. So of those 4, which ones are going to get thrones? The 2 boys. He does the next best thing for the 2 girls. He goes, hey, I'm not going to give you a throne. I have something else for you. And they're like, what? Well, 2 of them, there's going to be Hebe and Alithea, are the 2 girls who are also born to him and Hera. Hebe, he goes, instead of giving you a throne, I'm going to let you bring all of our food to us whenever we're hungry. So whenever we get hungry, we're going to clap our hands, and I want you to bring a plate with all the drinks and food on it. She's like, that's not as good as a throne. He goes, oh, maybe this will help. I'm hungry. She's like, oh, and she walks away. So he makes Hebe basically the waitress of Mount Olympus and says that you're going to be bringing us food and stuff like that. Alithea, the other daughter, he just doesn't really like and just kind of and boots her to the side, and she hardly shows up in any stories at all. She's just sort of like that other kid that exists but does not really show up. So if you see her like on the list, she's listed there, but she doesn't really show up in any stories. Zeus just didn't seem to care about that. He's like grumpy Gus. Google.
Isn't there a place called the first one? The first girl?
Hebe?
Yeah.
Like a place in Greece?
Yeah.
Probably could be. Most of these probably, and there's also a place called Olympia. So they got towns. That's like a throne. It's the next best thing. So with Hephaestus, we've talked about him already. What is he the god of?
The Forge.
He is the god of metalsmiths. Nicely done. Also, what do we know about him?
Thrown off a mountain.
Crippled and ugly. So there's a couple different stories about how he got crippled. So I had to sort of pick one to go with. So here's what I'm going to go with for you. The 2 versions, one says that his mom crippled him, one says that his dad crippled him. Either way, it was one of his parents. One says that his mom just thought he was ugly and yeeted him off. The one I'm going to go with is the one where his dad crippled him. It seems to be slightly more popular. So here's the story of how Hephaestus got crippled. Young boy, growing up on Mount Olympus, he was fine, not crippled, was sort of like one of those first kids that was born. Zeus, all super proud of him. Till one day, Zeus and Hera get into an argument, and they're yelling back and forth, fighting about, who knows, probably the fact that Zeus kept being friendly and making friends down on Earth. And so he and Hera are going back and yelling. When young Hephaestus walks in, sees his parents yelling, finds out what they're yelling about, and Hephaestus sides with his mother and starts yelling at Zeus also. You shouldn't make mommy so upset. Stop going out and making all of your friends. And Zeus does not like the fact that his young son is also yelling at him. And so he decides to take his anger out on his child. So as Hephaestus and Hera are yelling at him, he picks up young Hephaestus, gives him a good shake. Don't yell at your father. And Hephaestus goes, then you should make poor choices. And Zeus goes, oh, really? Picks him up and goes, yeet, and throws him as hard as he can. Now, one, you should not throw children.
Why not?
I felt the same way.
Too late.
So here's the problem. Well, one, I used to throw my children. They're fine. Most of them are still alive. The way it would work is we would play spaceship, where we'd go to like the bed and like, yay! Like when they were small babies, we'd throw them into the air, like, whee! And they fly through the air. Most of them landed on the bed, so it was okay. And so I would do that because I would channel my inner Zeus. But Zeus, not aiming for bed, he just throws as hard as he can. So throwing kid bad. But when you live in a house that doesn't really have walls, as Mount Olympus was mostly just a bunch of pillars, when you throw child, it's not going to hit wall. It's going to keep on going, which is bad. It gets worse. You also should not throw child when your house has no walls and is on top of a mountain. Because then when you throw child, it goes yay and keeps going, and there's nowhere for them to land, which is what happens to young Hephaestus. He goes zipping through the air, flapping his little arms, and realizing, I made a poor choice, I made a poor choice, and just goes flying out over the water. As he comes flying down, trying to do his best bird impression, flappy, 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 he realizes he's about to hit the water, and he's like, yay, and then sees an island, and does his best to try and aim for island. He's like, flappy arm, flappy arm, flappy arm, because he doesn't want to drown. He's a small child, and he gets lucky. He manages to turn himself so he lands on island. When he does, he lands with all that impact onto one leg, and essentially turns that leg into an accordion. The little thing like that. And his leg goes crunchly all onto one side. Normally, not an issue. Happens to gods all the time and you get hurt. But it turns out gods don't just heal normally. There's this stuff called nectar and ambrosia, which is basically God Gatorade. And gods had to drink this nectar and ambrosia, God Gatorade, and that's what healed them. As they got older, they had to drink less of it because their body would naturally produce it. But as small children, you definitely had to have it to keep yourself going. Zeus was so angry at Hephaestus, he said no nectar and ambrosia and forbid any god from giving him nectar and ambrosia, and basically kicked Hephaestus out and said, you are not welcome back to Mount Olympus, and left him down there. So now Hephaestus is down on this island. He grows up on island with just one long leg and one accordion leg, just walking in circles throughout the entire island. Gets to be older, into his 20s, is really grumpy, really angry at Zeus, until one day he hears this weird thunder on top of this mountain where he is on the island, and he thinks it's his father. But the thunder is not coming from on top of mountain. Thunder is coming from inside of mountain. So he ends up finding a way inside of mountain and going deep into it. And as he goes deep into it, the thunder gets louder and louder, until into the middle of this mountain it opens up into a giant open cavern. And in there he finds something that is definitely not his father. There are these three gigantic creatures inside the mountain banging away at this big metal forge. Those creatures being
Cyclops.
Cyclops sees small crippled child. Well, now small crippled young adult. And they're like, what's wrong with you? And he explains to them what happened. And they go, well, we're not controlled by your father. We're sort of our own thing. Why don't you come in and live with us? So the three Cyclops invite Hephaestus in, and he gets raised by them. And he gets trained by the Cyclops to become this metal forger, this metal smith, and becomes exceptional at it, almost to the same level as the Cyclops. To the point where one day he manages to impress his father. And there's another story we can get into someday where basically he makes a cursed chair that basically tricks Zeus and stuff like that. It's a great thing. But to the point where eventually Zeus is so impressed with Hephaestus' skills, he invites Hephaestus back up to Earth, or back up to Mount Olympus, and says, I apologize. Obviously you have all these skills. Can you please forgive me? And Hephaestus goes, no, but I will accept a throne. And eventually Hephaestus gets to come back up to Mount Olympus and get a throne. So that is sort of how he got to learn the metalsmithing. He got to know the Cyclops. He got connected to them and eventually gets back up there. With the Hephaestus thing, to help you remember that he's the god of metalsmiths, again, almost every poster we see of him, he's doing almost the exact same thing, except there he's just grumpily pouting. It is going to be working a hammer. And here is again, much like lawn mowing, I realize many of you guys should never do home repair, because we go Hephaestus, god of metalsmiths, and many of you are like, Mr. Broviak, I'm wielding a hammer. And I'm like, child, you should never hold a hammer unless you're wearing a helmet, because that was scary to watch.
What, this?
That'd be the one. So then, after Hephaestus, we have his brother who gets a throne.
Aries.
Nicely done. Ares is our next one to get a throne.
Aries, god of punching people.
What do we know about Ares?
Me.
God of War.
He is our god. Now, what kind of god of war is he?
Bad fighting war.
Nicely done. More than that, more the god of wussy war. Because he is the god of not... If you are strong and you want to fight a person, that's more Athena. Ares was more the I want to be a bully and I don't care how I'm going to win kind of war. And so that's where this whole Ares thing is coming from there. Ares was all a jerk, not a nice person. Other gods did not like him. They did not get along with him whatsoever. So I figured for Ares, I wanted to give you a hand sign to remind you that he's a god of war, but not a big, tough god of war. So on this one, it goes way back to me back in my junior high days. You might not get this from looking at me now, but I was a bit on the wussy side when I was a kid. I know, you have to stretch your imagination. It's okay. So back when I was younger, when I would get picked on, I would want to protect my brain whenever I got into a fight with somebody. And so I learned a particular fighting style that I'm going to teach to you now. This way you can protect yourself while fighting somebody while also protecting the brain. Here's how it works to each handle it for Ares. You're going to take one arm and it goes across your throat. It protects the throat jab I'm always teaching you guys about. So this way there is no throat jabbing. You're going to take your non-dominant hand. It comes behind elbow and protects the face like a football player's mask. This way you can't get punched in the face. You're protecting neck and face, all the vital bits. You then make fist with other hand and it allows you to come at your opponent like this the entire time. And it worked every time. Because every time someone would try to fight me, I'd be like, all right, you and me, let's go. And when they hit the ground laughing, I could run before they got back up again. So that's what we're going to help you
So you
do.
do that one thing.
I still think for Hephaestus we should have limped.
So for TikTok, it's going to be a thing. Watch for the trending. So that is going to be our wussy stance. Now, here's part of what bothers me. I've been doing Camp Tecumseh interviews this past couple days for the kids coming back. That's why I got to harass you. All of my past students, when they come back and they saw my posters, the one thing they remember from Greek mythology, like every single one of them, like, Greek mythology? And I'm like, that's what you remember? And they're like, oh. So now we have Hephaestus and Ares. Here's our problem. How many thrones are still left?
About
7.
5.
Five.
Some number.
By the way, we're not continuing Greek mythology on Monday. Because what's happening on Monday? 9-week assessment.
Midterm.
Men.
Same thing.